Well, folks, you're very welcome to this very first edition of Soundshack49. Our podcasts are created because of love speaking to people from all walks of life. So we're going to be speaking to people from the music industry, sports industry, entrepreneurs, arts and entertainment industry. And our very first edition is coming to you now. It's with a young author called Hazel Katherine Larkin. This was recorded at the end of last year, folks. I really hope you enjoyed. We delve into a wide variety of things during the chat. So we did cover her travels around the world, her podcast, which is the very first thing I asked. A podcast called Woman Up, and that's the very first question I asked Hazel. Folks, I hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you on the other side.
That's right. Well, it's funny because the podcast, which is called, as you said, Woman Up, it's my pet project, because as a child, which is, only about 12 years ago when I was young, I loved the idea of being on radio, because I think that radio, now we have podcasts, but I think the audio is a fantastic medium.
Pretty
Radio
amazing.
would possibly be my favorite medium, because you can take radio with you in a way that you can't take a screen with you. You can't really watch the screen and drive carefully, but you can listen to something and drive carefully. And you can pop the radio or a podcast in your ears when you go out for a walk, or you go out for a run, or you do other wild fitness things that people do. So as a child, I loved the idea of being on radio, and I used to buy the cassettes, the blank
Yes,
audio cassettes, and then pop them into something of very low quality, of course. But you worked with what you had, and invent stories and invent my own programs on radio. And if I was lucky, I could bribe or drag or persecute a sibling into joining me to be one of the other voices, because my repertoire isn't great. I could only do about 5 or 6 of them, so I needed some help. So and it was always great fun. And one of my daughters was asking me when I was talking about this and saying how I wanted to set up a podcast, and she was wondering if those tapes were still in evidence. And I said, thankfully, no. But some of them I still remember. No. I still remember the stories that I've made up, and doing the news in my best, RTE announcer's voice, or whatever it might be.
Oh, I used to love the voice. And were you a posh? Did you have the little mic? Do you remember the one with the little mic? Oh, we did. We just had the 3 holes at the end of it.
The 3 holes, exactly. And you didn't want to get too close, because you learnt about aspiration, even though you didn't know that's what it was, aspiration and sibilance. And you learnt about all of these things, even though you didn't know what they were called.
You had your play and red button, didn't you? You had your play and your red button. They were the ones.
Play and your red button. And then you learnt that if you put sellotape over the holes, you could re-record.
You can't be saying stuff like that. That's cheating. That was cheating. But we used to do it. Wasn't it brilliant? You'd have the cassettes, and then sometimes you want to listen back, but you listen back too many times, and you hear it's wound up, and oh my God,
yes,
devastating.
Or the other thing, if you remember, they used to stretch sometimes the tape in the cassette, so that would render it useless also, and then it'd be like, darn, now that's gone.
We used to do them. So I used to love the Dave Fanning show. He used to be on a night, sort of the rock show, Dave Fanning rock show. So you try and listen to, but Dave was actually very good. There was a few other DJs at the time. He used to talk over the start to the song, but you used to be listening to the songs. But there was bands. U2 were only kicking in. You had bands like The Blades. You had Something Happens. You had all these great Irish bands, and you used to always try and get them onto the. Dave was great for playing stuff from across the water, which was very hard to come by, Hazel, wasn't it, back then? Very hard to come by.
It really was. And he'd nearly give anybody a go. You'd send your demo tape into Dave, and he'd give it a listen, and he'd go, Asher, look, And but there's a lot of music that I would have heard first on Dave Fanning's show. Yeah.
Same
and
here.
You're right. He respected the artists, and he wouldn't talk over the beginning or the end of a particular piece.
You were saying about your vocal recordings with the show, which I used to love, and unfortunately it's gone off the radio. But you may remember it was back sort of in the 90s, early 2000s. Was a show called Rattlebag, and it used to be on RTE on the afternoons. But Rattlebag was brilliant, and there used to be guys on, sort of poets and people telling stories, and it was brilliant. I used to love it, Rattlebag. And
yes.
And these tapes, they're all gone then, are they?
They are. Thanks be to God.
And then music-wise, then you used to listen. So who would you listen to back in the day?
Do you know, I really was a Smiths fan.
Brilliant.
And I would have loved Morrissey up until he went bonkers. Whatever happened to him, God love him. I don't know if he fell and hurt his head or what he did to himself, but he's certainly gone a lot more right-wing now than I would ever have thought he could go.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be I wouldn't be a fan of his speechifying anymore. And then, of course, you get stuck then with that distinct sort of difficulty around separating the artist from the art. And it's like, well, can I listen to the Smiths anymore if Morrissey has turned out to be not a very nice person in his older years? Or do I say, well, he was all right back then, so I can still listen to this music? Or, it's that conundrum, because I thought about this a number of years ago, and I came down very much on the side that, that you can't separate the artist from the art. And if somebody is making art and you might think, gosh, this is marvelous, but everything they do is informed by how they think and what they feel. So therefore, that's in their art. And if someone's decided that they're racist or they're xenophobic or they're homophobic, or whatever they are, you just think, sorry, that's got to be in your art. So we
I'm a big animal person. Myself, my wife, my family are a very big animal person. Unfortunately, I read an article years ago, but we read an article then that James Hetfield, he likes shooting, and he goes out hunting bears and stuff. So from Metallica, so it sort of put a sour taste in my mouth. Really, it's amazing what you're saying, but it really does put a sour taste in your mouth. He goes and shoots bears and foxes and everything like that. So,
but
and as an animal lover, I hate that.
Yes, but the one hero who didn't fall from grace for me was the late, great, wonderful, marvelous Sinead O'Connor.
Sinead, yeah.
I would have been a fan of Sinead's from when...
Yes, me too. Huge.
Yeah, from when she was like 21 and released The Lion and the Cobra. And I remember listening to it. And again, it was on cassette. Yeah. And it was my late brother, Nigel. He had it on cassette. And I remember listening to it and hearing this voice and the ferocity of her. And the rawness and the conviction and the power and the beauty and all of that going on, and thinking, who in the name of God is that?
Yeah, and for such a petite person, the voice, it was like, what you call her? Her name's gone out of my head now, from the Cranberries. And
Dolores O'Riordan, yes.
Like, yeah. I've seen the Cranberries, and I remember back in the day seeing Sinead a few times, looking up to see her a few times, but such a petite person. And then they open their mouth, and it's like Sinead, I've never heard anybody sing like that. Never.
And we never will.
Like, oh no, it's unbelievable. People say about singers and all that, but in my personal view, definitely up there. And didn't have to do anything, didn't strain. It was like my wife likes Whitney Houston as a singer as well, and Aretha Franklin. These people, they weren't straining, they weren't pushing out the notes. It was just flawless.
Yes,
it's amazing to hear. Amazing.
And something actually, it's very interesting. Just the connection between those three voices is that all of those three women would have started singing devotional music in choirs. So if I'm not mistaken, Sinead would have done a stint in a choir as well. But certainly Aretha Franklin and Whitney Houston, that would be where their voices, I suppose, were first heard and first trained and first given some kind of exposure. It's interesting, isn't it? Because
they're sort of people we were talking about going for a walk or whatever, or going in your car listening, and when it's on, it's the volume just goes up.
Well, it has to. Yeah, I mean,
Sinead, Sinead, like these artists could sing anything, like literally anything. Sinead sang ballads, she sang rock songs, like Mandinka. Then she sang Nothing Compares to You, and she sang, as I sort of said, Irish traditional songs as well. And the Irish traditional songs are, nobody thinks are better. Maybe Luke Kelly, maybe, but
yeah, you're right. There was nothing she couldn't put her hand to, or her voice to.
It's amazing, some of them, and we were so lucky to be around. I'm sure you would have checked out some of the gigs back in Dublin. It was Funeral TV Club and all these other different places. And there was one on the Parallel Square on the end. I can't think of the name of it at the minute. It'll come to me. But the Ivy Rooms. We used to go in, and and one night I walked in and there was a band playing there, and it was the Golden Horde. Do you remember them?
Oh my God, they were brilliant. So good.
Like, unbelievable, the Golden Horde, and they were just playing. They had some super stuff, and another night I went in there and the band Light a Big Fire. I'm sure you remember them.
Yes.
Light a Big Fire. So Cactus World News. Like these were all bands, and they were all excellent, and great singers, just great bands, and going into Dublin and them. But yeah, but anyway, so that was good. But the Smiths anyway were.
Yeah, I would have been a fan of the Smiths, but enduring and forever, I think. Well, Sinead will always be, I think, my favorite artist because not just of how brilliant she was a performer, as we've spoken about, and as a writer as well, and a musician, but she spoke truth to power, and she did it fearlessly.
Yeah,
and I will always respect her for that. Can I tell you my Sinead story? I have a Sinead story because you're talking about how you'd walk into somewhere and there'd be the Golden Horde, there'd be whoever, and they'd be just sitting down doing their thing. And I have to say, as an aside, before I launch into my Sinead story, that is one of the things that I absolutely love and really appreciate about Ireland and living in Ireland, is that we don't really give a damn who you are or where you come from. In terms of, if you are and I say this with air quotes, famous person, you can go about your business and you'll be left alone. And if you want to go into Centra or Super Value or wherever you're going and pick up a bit of shopping, nobody will mither you. You'll be let alone to do it. And I think that that's one of the things that, and perhaps it's just an aversion to people with notions. Maybe that's part of it, that we don't go, oh my goodness, you're so-and-so. You're, my goodness, you're Robert De Niro. Oh my goodness, look at you, you're Rosie O'Donnell. We just kind of go, oh, there's your one. We just clock them and nod and move on. And I think it allows people a freedom to move around as they would like to, but also a freedom to be themselves. So, which leads me back to the point of, I was in Bewley's one night when it used to open in the evening. And this would be probably, yes, it would have been the early 90s, because it was around about the time that Sinead O'Connor was in fierce trouble for telling the truth.
Yes.
And ripping up the picture of the Pope.
Picture, yeah.
Yeah. That even if you weren't alive at the time, people still talk, you'll be aware of what it was. That she said, fight the real enemy, and tore up a picture of the Pope because she was protesting and highlighting the abuses that were happening within the church. And at the time she was vilified by many people, but she stuck to her guns, and glory be, wasn't she right? But around about that time, I was in Bewley's with a friend of mine, and Sinead O'Connor walked in with some of her friends, and they went and we sat down. And again, that thing of, oh, there's Sinead, oh, grand. And she sat down. And at some stage, after a couple of cups of coffee in Bewley's, I decided it was time to go to the loo. I went to the loo, and who came out of the cubicle except Sinead? And we were washing our hands at the same time, and she dried, and she was about to go out the door. And I said, excuse me, I said, would you mind if I said something to you? And she turned around, and on her face and her kind of shoulders went down a bit, and it was like she was prepared to take a verbal beating. She was ready for somebody to say the state of you and how dare you and blah, blah. But she didn't turn around and say, would you ever go and F off?
Yeah.
She turned around to face me, and I just looked at her and I said, you're having a really hard time at the moment. I said, people are being very unkind, and they're taking again you because you've spoken the truth. And I said, I don't think that's fair. I said, I think you deserve to be treated better, and whatever else I said. And then I just thought, oh, I'm running out of words here, and I'm just making an idiot of myself, which is, something I do on a daily basis. But anyway, and I said to her, look, I said, words can only say so much. I said, would you like a hug? So I gave her a hug. I love hugs. So I gave Sinead a hug, and she stepped back and she said, thank you so much. She said, that was lovely. It's been so long since somebody hugged me.
Fair play to you.
My heart just broke for her. And then I said, I'm so sorry. I said, I should have said my name was Hazel. And she goes, Hazel, it's lovely to meet you. I'm Sinead. And then she went, Jesus, fuck yeah, you know that already, don't you? Sorry for swearing on your podcast, but that's exactly what the woman said to me. And then we were chatting for a bit, and I said, look, you're so strong, but you shouldn't have to be. And then she looked at me, and she almost sheepishly, and she said, do you know, that hug was lovely. Could I have another one?
And I was, well, brilliant. And I read an article we lost with Chris Christopherson, and but he was talking about Sinead O'Connor when that happened. He was at that gig.
Yes.
And there were people booing or whatever. He walked out, put his arm around her, and he said, fair play to you. Which is like these boys now, they old hat. Chris has seen and done everything. I'm sure he'd done some stuff in his time, but Yeah, but like these artists, like they're brilliant, just saying this and saying that. And I keep saying, well, like, we're ancient. We're not really. We're young people. But back then, there was no phones, no
hang on. There were
internet,
no mobile phones. We're not
no mobile phones.
pre-Alexander. Yes,
The
okay.
windy goods, it's the thing. Yeah, but there was no internet. But like we were seeing this when we had papers. So, but I remember like the Sun, all these good papers, the Sun, the Times, and all these ones, all on the front of it. Yeah, I'm being sarcastic, by the way, about that. But
I understand.
so they were all on the front. Remember, you go to your local shop and they'd be all on the front. But that picture was everywhere, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, all in the magazines, Hot Press, Smash Hits, or all of these. It was on them, but it was everywhere. But yeah, that the lady, she went through some time. Losing her son then was devastating. It was so sad as a parent. When I finished school, I went straight working, and then it was just I'm still working. Probably like yourself, was it straight away, or did you do college? Or
well, it's funny. I left school because I was 16 then doing my leaving, which was far too young to start with. But also, I just was not in the headspace. There'd just been so much going on in the years leading up to then. And I knew in fifth year, funny, I was just saying this to my eldest daughter yesterday, the day before, that I knew at 15 that I needed a year off to go and just kind of sort my head out.
Yeah.
Or, to just not have to press pause on my life so I could try and, get some help for my mental health. And that, of course, didn't happen. So I ended up doing the leaving. And that was back in the day. Whereas if you failed maths, you failed the whole thing. So I think technically I failed my leaving. Although I did get, I passed all my languages. I did well in languages for some reason. But I then went straight into drama school, which I loved. It was like, okay, I'm home now. These are my people.
Where did you do that from?
I did that in Inchicore.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
in the VC in Inchicore.
That would have been 2 buses.
No, it was one. It was one bus and a bit of a walk. Yeah,
a bit of a stroll. Yeah,
a bit of a stroll. Yeah,
drama school. Excellent.
Yeah. And I made some great friends there. Some of whom I'm still friends with.
Brilliant.
And then I went and I worked for a year. So you leave drama school and then you're doing the thing of auditioning and wondering where to next and what next, and doing for profit shares in theatres, which means nobody gets fucking paid. But you tell yourself that if the run does really well, you will. And it's really just for the experience and all the rest of it. Joining this, and also, so you've got enough on your CV then to join Equity, which is the union, and that matters because if you're an Equity artist, then you're more likely to be called for auditions, and also you're allowed to work professionally if you're part of the union. And in certain countries, it's more enforced than others. Anyway, so I was doing that, and then I also worked with CARI, which is the Children at Risk in Ireland Foundation, which had just been set up, and they worked with children who had been sexually abused and their families. And I worked there for just over a year. And then I went to London to see a friend of mine, and I met my first husband, who was from Singapore. So then I went off to the other side of the world and stayed there for a little while. Well, about 10, 12 years. Yeah. Singapore, India, and Indonesia were mainly where I lived, but then I dip in and out to other countries. I spent a few months in Bangkok. And I would have gone up, and I never lived in Malaysia, I never worked there, but I would have been over that border very often. So I would have
Hazel, these back then, we're going back, nearly 30 years. I'm sorry for.
Oh, yeah, it was 1994. So yeah,
because
31 years. Can I just say I was a child bride? Can I just say that?
Yeah. Listen, we were worlds apart from what we grew up in. Like, because I've been to Bangkok, I did a good bit of traveling. Myself and my wife did, but Bangkok totally like chalk and cheese compared to what we were used to really growing up.
Absolutely. And you think about it, the first time you're flying into somewhere like, okay, so my first time then flying to Singapore, 94, and you're handed the landing card because you're arriving as a foreigner, as a tourist, and it's visa on arrival. I think then as now, you got 90 days on a tourist visa, so that was fine. But you're handed this landing card, and you fill out your name, your address, how long you're going to be in the place for, where you're going to stay, all of this information. And in these block capital letters, bold on the bottom is, drug trafficking is a hanging offence in Singapore, and you're frightening the life. You'd be thinking, should I flush my paracetamol down the toilet before we go? Because you're absolutely terrified. But even though you've never, it's like when you're stopped at a guard at the checkpoint, even though you're, all your NTT and your insurance and everything is all up to date, your tax and your license and everything, you still sit there with a big guilty head on you because you just feel like you must have done something wrong. So it's that same level of anxiety, maybe slightly greater, because God bless them, the guards aren't going to hang you on the side of the road. But it's that fear. And then likewise, again, flying into Indonesia, flying into Vietnam, flying into Thailand, any of these places, you're warned that it's a death penalty if you're carrying drugs, and they mean very little. I know that when I first went out there, if you had, as how they translated it to me, how my Singaporean friends would have translated it to me, would be that if you had enough for 3 joints, like if you were found with enough cannabis to roll 3 joints, that was it, you were a trafficker. And therefore it wasn't just for personal use. And the thing is, that you could be sentenced on a Monday and hanged on a Friday, and I'm not joking. Like, these guys do not hang around. It's like, we're not spending the money feeding you for 20 or 30 years on death row. It's like, get out. Unless you have a
massive time. Food would have been totally different. The climate as well, Hazel. You're talking about very, very warm climate, and then monsoon rains come down and everything's washed away. Chickens going down the road. Everything. It's so strange, but it's a massive change from what we would have known growing up.
Oh goodness, yes. But you know something? I absolutely took to it like a duck to water the minute I got off the plane. I loved the heat. Now, I had been warned by people who had been there, who had lived there before I left London. They were saying, the heat is terrible. It'll take you a long time to get used to it. So I was braced for this wall of heat that I never really met, to be honest. I love. I mean,
you like
back
the heat,
then, the climate, the climate is changing, and it's a few degrees warmer now than it was when I first lived there. But you're looking at between 25 and 27 all year round.
Beautiful, isn't it?
I was happy enough with that. What would sap you, though, of course, is the 80% humidity, because we were only 1 degree north of the equator.
Yeah.
So it was humid. But, that's why air conditioning was invented, and you'd be fine. But you're right. The food was something else entirely. Oh gosh, you've just reminded me. I remember my first husband was Malay, so both of his parents then would have come from Malaysia, but he was born in 62. He was a lot older than I was, but he was born before Singapore got its independence. So it would have been Malaysia and Singapore would have been known jointly as Malaya. So both of his parents would have come from just outside Malacca in Malaysia down into Singapore. And that's where they married. And his mother, God bless her, she was 14 years of age when she got married. She was a 25-year-old, which you kind of think, like by the time she was 19, she had 3 children.
Janie back.
I know, yeah, and didn't speak English.
Yeah.
So she was, a Malay speak. But the advantage of that for me was that I learned Malay very quickly.
Brilliant.
Because we lived with them for the first couple of weeks, and I was at home all day with her while everybody else went off to work and whatever else they were doing. And I thought, you had to pick up some words and learn, because otherwise you'd be sitting there looking at each other in silence all day, which I don't think would have been particularly edifying. But he had a nephew at the time who was about 5, who thought it was hilarious that I couldn't speak Malay. It was like, what on earth was wrong with me? Because I was the only person in his universe who couldn't cakap Melayu.
Yeah.
So he took it upon himself then to teach me some words. He'd like point at a building and go, Ruma. And I understood that meant house. And then we'd move on to the next word. And it was fun.
A great way to learn. Yeah.
It's a great way to learn. It's
keeping an eye on him,
isn't it? You have no choice. But coming back to the food, there are 2 things. First of all, I cook now, and I love cooking because of my first husband's mother. Because she loved to cook. But she was a wonderful cook. Oh my goodness, this woman was gifted. And she took it upon herself to teach me. And how she did that, there was none of this going to the supermarket business. She'd take me across the road to the wet market, and on one side there would be the meat. And they, of course, were Muslim, so they would go to the halal butcher for their meat, and then for the vegetables and the fruit. And she would teach me how to choose fruit and vegetables, and how to know a good one and a fresh one and one that was nearly ripe, and how actually you wanted a young one that wasn't quite ripe if you were making this dish, but for that dish you wanted one that was nearly on the turn. And it was like a wonderful education.
Everything tastes fabulous.
Yeah. She was one of these people who cooked by a bit of this, enough of that, some of something else. And of course, I had come straight from home economics classes in Ireland, where everything had to be,
brown
measured
bread
to the last gram. And if there was something wrong, it's because you didn't measure it properly and your oven was too hot or too cold, whatever else. And I was allergic. I thought, oh my goodness, this can't work. But of course it worked. And it was that wonderful way of cooking by instinct that she showed me how to just kind of, when it smells right, when it looks right, when it changes cut, that's how you know it's done. And, she just did that joy of cooking. She gave me that. And I will never, God, she's dead now, God bless her. But it's a gift that she gave me that I know where it came from. My children know where it came from.
Yeah.
So I think nearly every time I cook, it's a blessing for her, because I think of her and I remember her, and I, bless her memory that she.
I love it. And when you're cooking then at home, did the family get involved? Does everybody come around and get involved?
Goodness, well, the family is the two girls, so they would have, they would have grown up learning around food and around cooking and around, I would have taught them how to choose the fruit and the vegetables the way I had been taught. But what I also used to do for fun or for torture, whichever, I thought it was fun. Maybe they thought it was torture. I'd have spices and they'd be in their jars, but I wouldn't label them. So what we would do is I would say to them, well, look, what do you think that is, by the smell of it and the sight of it and the side of a cumin seed as opposed to a fennel seed, or, how do you know the difference? Well, you smell it and you look at it, and that's how they would identify spices.
Yeah.
Just game.
And there's so many spices.
Yes.
There's so, like...
Yes. Yeah. No, it is.
And what's your favourite dish to cook then at home?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, we're vegetarian, so I would cook. I love to cook laksa and I love to cook rendang. But so laksa is a Malaysian dish and then rendang is an Indonesian dish. It's fantastic. It's well, funny enough, what they both have in common is lashings of coconut milk. So no calories.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Don't count the calories. Don't worry about that.
I love it though, My sister-in-law is, how I know, she's a vegetarian. So she actually lives in Melbourne, where I was saying we're going to be there a good few times, and we go to these Vietnamese restaurants and Indonesian restaurants the whole time. So that's why I know. She'd say to me, you don't eat chicken or beef or whatever, try this. And that's when I had it. But the taste is just, everything tastes, fabulous.
That's exactly it. And it's when you learn that, chili is just there to complement other flavors. It's not, oh my goodness, it's the hottest thing, and look how fabulous I am that I can eat really, really hot stuff. It's like saying, aren't I fabulous? I can eat really salty stuff. Why would you do that to yourself? It just overwhelms and overpowers the flavors and the fragrances of everything else in the dish. So it's kind of learning, heat is great, but you don't want.
We were in a restaurant in sorry, I talked over you. Excuse me. Right, we were in a restaurant in the city, and it's a Malaysian restaurant on Capel Street. And I brought a friend of mine in, and we were sitting down on a thing, and I said, "Here," he said, "You order." I don't know what I'm ordering. I said, "You like this?" And I got it on. And next one, he got chips and just threw the chips in on top of it with loads of salt. And I'm going, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you just threw chips in." I have to have chips with the Chinese. I said, this isn't the Chinese.
It's not Chinese.
It's something different. But he just threw a whole bucket of chips in on top. But the lady understood. And of course, he just threw it in, chips and loads of vinegar, loads of salt. So that was the whole taste of it, just gone out the window. Amazing.
Absolutely.
It was amazing. So you have 2 books under your belt. So the next one is going to be a cookery book, is it?
Gosh, you're not the first person to have said that. I don't think.
Yes.
Maybe. I don't know. The next one I think will be an academic book based on my PhD thesis because, oh yes, I got sidetracked. Did I interrupt myself? I think only in Ireland you can say that.
Yeah, we did. We started yapping. We were talking actually, Hazel. Right, I'm going back to my notes here. We were actually talking about your podcast, and then we got into it. We took a ramble. We took a ramble for 20 minutes there. So, which is great. I love it. This is Soundshack49. This is what we do. We just ramble, and that's what Irish people do, don't they?
It's great.
We ramble, but it's brilliant. So we'll shoot back to your podcast, and then we'll go on to your books then for our devoted listeners. Hopefully they'll forgive us.
I haven't put them to sleep yet. The podcast is called Woman Up, and the tagline is that it's by, for, and about women and the things that matter to us. So I made a decision before I started it that I would only interview women. So I only interview women. And it's a wonderful excuse to talk to people that I find interesting and have them tell me about the interesting things that they do in their lives and what interests them. And honestly, on a given day, it could be, well, actually, what interests me today is the fact that it's lashing rain out and I've just put out a wash. That might be the thing that's of utmost importance to somebody on a given day. So it's been on a hiatus now for a little while because I was busy doing other things. But I've just recorded the day before yesterday. I recorded the first episode of the next season, and that will be out and winging its way into people's ears on Monday of next week.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Some Monday next week. So the 20, what's that, 9th, is it? 28th or 9th?
Something like that. One of those days. That.
Well, listen, there you go, have to listen. But that's, so you've recorded, because I've listened to a good few of them. It's on your second or third season of it, is it? Of the podcast?
This I think will be the first episode of the third season.
Third season.
I think, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Good fun.
So warming up. Now, which week I'll sidetrack. We won't talk about cooking again, enough for a minute. But tell us about your books. Tell us about your 2 books.
Yes. Well, the first one is Gullible Travels. And that was, goodness me, that was published 10 years ago this November. So I will be recording the audio version of that to mark the 10-year anniversary, and also with a new introduction, because of course I would write a different book now, and certainly I know more now, or I think I know more now than I did 10 years ago. So there are certain things in the book that I think, oh gosh, that's not well explained, or I didn't understand even when I was writing the book what I was the implications of what I was dealing with. So I'll just put that into an introduction. But yeah, that book is predominantly about the time that I spent in Asia, and the various husbands and the devilments they got up to, and how I'm very good at getting myself into trouble, but I'm equally as good as getting myself out of trouble. And how I ended up with my 2 wonderful girls because they struggle. I got married at 20 because I wanted to be a mum.
Yeah.
And it took a while before my girls decided to put in an appearance. So I used to say it took me nearly 10 years to get the recipe right, and ever since then I've been missing an ingredient. There we are, back to cooking.
But Hazel, I myself and Ashlyn, we're going 89. I think we got together. We didn't get married till, I don't know, I think 2010. I think it was, we got married. The girls didn't come along till 2005, 2007. It's funny, I wouldn't change that, because we travelled when we were young. We did a lot of travelling. We did a lot of, the typical Irish culture, nightclubs, going to gigs. I was gigging a lot as well, music-wise, partying. We were hanging around friends. We were doing all of this, and then we travelled. But Ash is always saying she would have liked to have done it, had the kids, the girls a lot younger, It was a good time, we were sort of more mature.
Absolutely.
We had I didn't listen to anybody. People were telling me, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. No, listen, I know my child. I knew my children after the space of a week or two, like I knew them inside out, what to wear, and I knew what to do. And that's one thing which we learned from having our first daughter compared to the second one. When our first daughter was born, the house was swarmed with people. And Ash was just so tired. The people were coming in from everywhere, oh, congratulations. And we didn't, the door was constantly open. But when my second daughter was born, the door was shut and everybody go away for 4 weeks at least. Give us time, Yeah. So, but the 10 years then, that's, I'm sure, would you change that now if you're looking back or?
In terms of, no, I'd still like to have had them younger because although it does mean that I didn't have any of those or as much maybe out and aboutness as yourself and Aisling did, that you were out being young people when you were young.
We were.
Yeah, which is,
it.
The proper order of things. But when my girls came along, because I've been on my own with the two of them since the day after I found out I was pregnant with Kashmira. So we're talking August of 2003. So they've literally been traveling since before they were born, because they never really put a stop to my gallop. It was just, well, what I'm doing, oh, look, you're just going to have to come along for the ride. So, and now that they're adults, I can say to them, what was that like for you? Because I just thought, well, what else am I going to do? If I'm going somewhere, my children are coming with me. End of. And I wondered, I said to them, did you feel that you were kind of dragged along to things, or that it was an opportunity that was fun? And whether or not they're lying to me, but they do assure me that, it was actually fun because they got to go places and see, like if I was going to a conference, they had to come with me.
They came,
when I first, because you did ask about, the education, did I go to work or go into education? And because I was 16 leaving school, and then I did drama and then went off and got married. And then when I returned to Ireland, which I did very reluctantly, I didn't want to come back, but I thought to kind of make sense of it, or to make a go of it, or to make it worthwhile, I might look at returning to education. So I applied to do a BA in Maynooth, which is only up the road. And I remember I had two kids under the age of 4. I think Kashmira was 18 months and Ishtara would have been 3.5. Anyway. And Kashmira, of course, was still on the boob. So I go back to school with two kids under the age of 4, and one of them still on the boob. And I had fierce imposter syndrome. Oh my goodness. I still remember that my first day on campus, and I'd missed the orientation because I was at home putting babies to bed or whatever. And I remember I needed to get to the library. I didn't know where it was. And I didn't want to stop somebody and ask, because I thought, if I ask you where the library is, then you'll know that I don't know. And then you'll know that I don't belong here. And I don't know if I could cope with that or that shame.
No, we know exactly what you're saying. Yeah. It's a funny thing. You're sort of saying, I shouldn't be here, I shouldn't be there, and you were sort of doubting yourself.
Out. Exactly.
Yeah, you're in doubt the whole time.
Completely. Until I graduated. And I remember, so that would have been 2009. I graduated with an honours degree in psychology and sociology.
Fantastic. Brilliant.
And I remember just going, I was barely holding back tears at the graduation ceremony because it was so solemn, and half of it was in Latin. And I thought, this actually means something, because the president of the university was saying, as I call out your names, you will be entered into the rolls of the university. Like, it will be written down and you will be acknowledged as having done this thing.
Fantastic.
And I just thought, oh my God, maybe I'm not a waste of space after all. But then I got bitten by the bug. I remember when I dropped my thesis in to be marked for my primary degree. As we were walking back out, so Kashmira would have been 5.5 at this stage, my younger one. And as we were walking back out, she looked up at me and she said, will you be a normal mummy now?
Yeah, they can bring you back to ground, can't they?
And I thought, oh God, you poor little thing, I'll never be normal. The answer, I think, was no, because I took a year off, and then I started my master's degree 2 years after that. And then I found I was doing a lot of voluntary work with charities and NGOs. And I found it very frustrating when there would be funding to fund the job that I had been doing for free. And I'd go and I'd apply for essentially my job, hoping I could be paid maybe for what I'd been doing. And I never got the job. And I was kind of going, that's very interesting. And I remember saying, but can can I get feedback? And why am I rubbish at interviews? Do I not have enough in my seat? Like, what do I need? And they went, you don't have the law piece, the bit around human rights. And I went, all right. So I went to Belfast and I studied at Queen's and I got the law piece. And then I went back and did it. Well, I started a PhD in Trinity and I did a year there in 2013 to 2014. And then my supervisor, she didn't retire. She was retired because she'd reached the age. So she was no longer allowed to be my supervisor. And they did, suggest somebody else, but my goodness, that woman was just she was the head of school at the time and she was far too busy. And she didn't quite get my project and what I wanted to do. So I thought, no, I'm going to step away from this for now because, I don't think it's a good fit. And that's when I went to Belfast and did the LLM in international human rights law and then came back and started a PhD again. Started the second one. And I think I've been bitten by the bug because I'm looking now at doing a second one because it's fun. I like to read.
Well, listen, reading I love it, You can't see it here, but I have you books behind you, but I have a huge shelf here, books and different artifacts. But so besides your kids, which is a massive achievement for anybody, I always wholeheartedly say that's really the best part of your life, really, is it's your kids, But what would be your do you think if you were if I put you on the spot, which I'm going to, your biggest achievement, like what's the one you say, I'm going to take down that Grammy or that Emmy or that, like, I honestly think personally, you going back to college with 2 small kids, that's a serious, that's because I know the effort of minding kids. You brought them with you. This is unbelievable. So in my view, that's a fairly big achievement.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember, again, Kashmir, my youngest, she was playing with her doll one day. She would have been maybe 2.5. And this was her version of playing Mammy. She picked up the doll and she went, yes, 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 baby, just let me finish this essay first. Because that's what Mammies say. And then for her part, Ishtara cooked a curry from scratch for the first time because I was working on an essay. And I said, look, I need to submit this. I need, there's a deadline. I need to get this in today. And then I'll do, and then I'll make the dinner. And she went, okay, but I'm getting hungry now. That's going to be an hour because you're only checking your references now. Cheeky mare.
Yes.
That'll be an hour. She said, and then it'll take you an hour to cook. And then she said, I'll be absolutely starved. I'll just do it myself. And she did. And then do you know what? It was the rock she perished on because she did such a good job. I knew she was well. Yeah, but that's a really interesting question. And I don't think anybody has ever asked me before. And I think, if it's not going to sound too self-congratulatory and, polish my halo there for me, please, I think what really matters to me and what I take great, I don't know if joy is the right word, but it kind of reinforces my reason for existence, if that doesn't sound too lofty, which it probably does, but never mind, is when somebody hears me on a podcast like this one or reads something that I have written and gets in touch with me to say, thank you.
Brilliant.
I thought I was the only one. I thought that nobody else had been through this. Or thank you for putting into words what I could only put into feelings. And now I know. And that just means so much.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that. You were really quickly. I do a lot of work for charities, and I know you were saying you did them yourself, but it's lovely there. I got a note, a text about a month or two ago, and I would do race nights, walks. I went across the Arctic. I did loads of stuff for charities. I love doing it. I love helping people out. And I got a text just out of the blue a few weeks ago, and this lady said, by the way, she said, I never got to thank you for doing that fundraiser. She said, it's just we were so happy. Anyway, her daughter was in a serious accident and helped fund it. But I just got a text about it and it was great. It's lovely. And when people just come up and it's a simple thing, going back to when you met Sinead O'Connor, just the little things that people say when we were growing up, we always, you got your dinner, you say thanks, thank you. Appreciate that. It doesn't happen now. It doesn't happen. It's great. It's nice to hear it. People really genuinely are very good.
And that's what have always said to my girls. You know, I said that there is more love than hate. Just hate is louder.
If you were, I'm not going to take much more of your time. And you know what?
Right.
I've really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Just two more little things I want to ask you. Do your kids follow in your trade, work ethic?
Really interesting question. My girl, you see, I raised them with a mantra, and I said, only do it if it's fun. And when it stops being fun, stop doing it. Because, and I say jokingly that I would make a very bad Buddhist, because I believe that life is about suffering. I think we're meant to find our joy. I think, you know, I could go down that rabbit hole for a little while, but I won't. So do they follow in my footsteps? In as much as, yes, they only do what they love to do.
Brilliant. Hazel, that's brilliant.
Yeah. So, and they've said to me again as adults, and I'm saying, well, you know, they've come back to me and said that knowing that, and that I said that to them all the time, and I reminded them of that all the time, it meant they said they knew that we could do anything or say we wanted to do anything in terms of studying or traveling or, you know, life work, that they would say that because that was the mantra, they said, we always knew that you'd never be disappointed. And I thought, oh, really? I didn't know that. I just wanted you to have fun. But Kashmira, again, would say that she was, you know, 1 week she'd be interested in being a psychologist, and maybe 6 months later she'd want to study art at the Sorbonne. I'm kind of going, great, go for it. You should do it all. You know, you don't have to choose one thing. Yeah, they do. Ishtara, my eldest, she has just finished her degree in addiction studies. And it always made me, because it sounds like she was learning how to be a really good addict, but it was actually learning how to support people who are in addiction. But what she's done now is that she realized about 6 weeks before the end of the course, she said, you know, I've just realized that I don't think I can do this work for the rest of my life. I said, that's fine. You've tried it. Yeah, I said, transferable skills, and you've learned things. And she's good. Yeah, and you know what? She was actually right, because she's too soft. She would see somebody and she'd see through to their trauma. She'd want to bring every homeless person home. You know, that's called magic wand. And what she's going to do is turn her life experiences into a job. She's setting herself up as a virtual assistant to people with neurodivergent brains. So people like myself and her sister who are riddled with ADHD, and people who have traumatic brain injuries and these kinds of difficult, where they find just kind of what we'd call normal life stuff difficult. Like sometimes, would you open that email for me? I'm afraid that person's going to be cross with me, and will you just open it and say if they're being mean, or if it's all right? And she'll look at it and she said, yeah, they're just saying that they need another little while. Will you give them 3 weeks and they'll get back to you? I'm kind of, oh, thank God for that. Or she'll say, no, actually that person has said that they were expecting to hear back from you and you've forgotten to email, and I'm kind of, that's right, I have forgot. Oh, that kind of thing. So, and to her, she's kind of going, that's easy, that's fine. But to me, it's like, oh, that has to sit there for 3 weeks because I can't look at it because they might be annoyed with me. So that's what she does. She also actually took the photograph for the cover of my second book.
Oh, your second book? We never
Body of Evidence, which
Hazel, we're terrible. You know, we just talk too much.
No, we just talk for it.
So, Body of Evidence.
Evidence is essays from a crime scene, which is the body of a woman who was sexually abused as a child. So what I did was I just went through my body and said, this is how abuse affected it. And what was interesting was, because I thought this is going to be one of these miserable books that only very few people want to read because it'd be. But I found that in every essay, my children showed up, and they showed up as kind of as an antidote to pain. You know, that they are the joy, that they reminded me that. And I'm not saying that, you know, when I was, and, you know, content alert here, on occasions when I may have been quite suicidal and had a plan and all the rest of it, that it wasn't that I thought, no, I must live for my children, because when you're in that space, you're thinking, they'll be better, the whole world would be better off without
you. Be better. Yeah.
But you don't. So I'm not saying that I lived for them, but there was a part of me that thought, oh, my goodness, but what am I leaving them to if I leave them? So it was, they helped me find purpose and meaning through them. And in a way, they were sometimes a light and sometimes a mirror, a light to show me the way and sometimes a mirror to show me, who I am at my core. Yeah, so that's that book, and that's Ishtara. Kashmir is another, as you said, our girls are very alike and very different. When you have two girls, and the same thing with 2 years between them, we have that in common, that they are very alike in certain ways and very different in other ways. So Kashmira is quite different because Ishtara still lives with me. She has no intention of moving away from her mammy, and I'm quite happy with that. But Kashmira moved to Belfast a few months after she turned 18. Because she's a funny one. She started I homeschooled my children for a number of reasons. It fit with my lifestyle. It fit with the fact that I was going to conferences and I was going to school myself, and I just kind of thought, geez, we can't all be going to. So she started her degree when she was 13, and I think she's still the youngest person to have been accepted to do a degree by the Open University, because of course she was only 13, and you're a child when you're 13, however much you might think you're not. So there was absolutely no question of her going to a bricks and mortar university. That wasn't going to happen, because she'd be the oddity, she'd be one of those children, the way you read in the paper or something back in the day when you had paper, about the 14-year-old barrister from Oxford, and you're thinking, you're just an oddity for a week. What about the rest of your development? And I was very conscious that I was raising a human, not a brain in a jar. So I said,
I resonate with that, because I only read an article about, I don't know, sorry, I know I'm just talking. But when you're saying about that, I get so annoyed. Because I don't know, do you follow darts? There was a fabulous new player on the scene, but he came on, I think, when he was 16. Quote me if I'm wrong. He may have been 17, but he was playing in the World Championship, and he absolutely, the press were on him. He was on Sky News, on every paper, on everything. He's still only a child, and he was on, and all the darts players were saying, just all the well-renowned darts players were saying, just let him play darts. Just leave the kid alone. Let him play darts. Let him play darts. He went on anyway. He won the World Championship, and now he's a superstar in darts, which is absolutely brilliant. But exactly what you're saying about your daughter, if she had went, say, somewhere like Belfast University or Maynooth College or somewhere like this, it's just at that age it would have been
too young. It's that asynchronistic learning. She needed something to keep the brain happy, and the next step was a degree. So she did an honours degree in politics, philosophy and economics. And she got a first. Sorry, proud mammy brag. She got a first.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Brilliant. And of course I burst into tears and started bawling my eyes out, and I was on a Zoom at the time.
Well, why wouldn't you? It's fabulous, fabulous.
And first of all, because we had cameras on, mics off, we were doing like this co-working thing with other people with ADHD, so that we all have a bit of accountability and whatever else. So I knew these women quite well. And the facilitator said afterwards, when we came back from our 40 minutes of structured work and back into report how we'd got on and what we got done, and she said, Hazel, first of all, I thought you were having a big sneezing fit. And then I thought you were laughing. She said, and then I saw you were crying. She said, darling, is everything all right? I said, my daughter got a first in her degree. And she's like,
fantastic.
Right, I don't know what to do about this. So, yes. But because she was only 13, yes, she needed to do the piece around, satisfying her intellectual curiosity and going to lectures and doing essays and the discipline of a degree. But she also needed to, lie down in the field with her friends and look at clouds and learn to roller skate or skate, do skateboards and get up to a bit of diddling that I know nothing about and never will and don't need to know because it's fine.
Yeah, go to the Abbey.
Probably. Look, stop. Or the guy needs to. Exactly. Yes, and you wouldn't have a fizzy drink or two before you went in. Not at all. You wouldn't be doing that. No, not at all. Yeah, so she took a year off then, as I said to her, it's a good idea to take a year off between degrees because I always did. So she took a year off and she started back last week. She's doing an MSc in city planning and design in Queen's University. And of course, I'm delighted because it's my alma mater, and I'm delighted she's going to Queen's. And she's loving it. You know, she got because she took the year that she took off, she spent learning more about the application of the degree. And she went to the course convener, and she got along like a house on fire, you know, when they were having the open day, if you like, and to learn more about the degree when she was thinking about registering. And for the year where she wasn't actually enrolled, if there was a field trip somewhere, if there was a convention or a conference or something that he thought she might be interested in, he'd let her know and she'd go along. So she was on the periphery, but still learning about it. So she's very excited. So I had to get her a new pencil there and a new lunchbox before she started big school last week. So that's what they're up to. They're happy. And they're doing,
you know, Belfast is a lovely city.
I love Belfast.
It's a lovely city. Yeah, it's a lovely city, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fantastic. I've actually loved talking to you. I'd love to stay here and keep everybody on for hours, but I don't want to waste your time. So listen, as I said, I've one or two little things.
Absolute delight, Aidan. I've just seen the clock. I can't believe we've been chatting for this long. We've been chatting for this long.
So there you go. I ask everybody a load of mad questions, right? So this one is going for you, and I'm after rooting this one out for you. If you were to say, I'm going to have one message for the world, what do you think? What would you think? One message. Now, you have lived, like, you've put a lot into your life, probably like myself, but you love living, you love life. Family is a huge thing, and you're two lovely girls, and it's a huge thing. But if you were to give them a message to anybody out there, what do you think you'd say? And I don't mean to put you on the spot again.
No, you didn't mean to put me on the spot, but that's brilliant, because it meant that whatever percolates up must be the right answer without thinking and overthinking, going, what's going to sound good? So my immediate response to that, Aidan, was, you are enough. You are loved. You are not alone. That's it.
You're not alone. Yeah, there's always somebody out there. So the next 5 years, what's the plan? And then we'll leave it at that. We'll say goodbye to everybody. The next 5 years, what's the plan? You shoot. What's the plan? So we'll say 5 years. I won't give you 10.
Such a middle class question. You know, because I think it's a question of privilege, because those of us who are poor working class people kind of think, geez, if I get to the end of the week, I'll be doing well.
Yeah.
But it's always nice to have a plan. And I always have a plan. And even if nothing works out according to plan, it doesn't matter. I find safety in plans. So I'll be honest with you. From next week, I'm taking a month off. I'm going on retreat. I said to Ishtar, my eldest, during the week, I said, well, you know, it's a bit like rehab. And she goes, Mum, don't tell people you're going to rehab. You're going on a retreat. And I was going, well, technically it is rehabilitation, you know, because I'm going back. It's a bit of health stuff, bit of healing stuff. And she goes, yeah, but people always assume that if you say rehab, it's drink or drugs. And I was going, okay, fine. So that's what I'm doing. I'm taking a month off. When you were saying that, you know, you're going to take a few months off, while you go from top to tail of the American continent, I'm going to take a month, and I've a bit of work to do, a bit more work around the trauma stuff to do, because it always comes back up again. You know, you think you've dealt with it, and it rears its head and bites you in the arse again, and off you go, and you go, thank you, young, and your bleeding spiral, thank you.
Yeah.
So that's that month. But in 5 years' time, when I'm 40.
Well done.
I would like to have finished probably another 4 books, because I have one with a publisher at the moment. I have another one that I'm writing notes for. I have a book of bilingual poetry. That's sitting there. And it's about family and my children. And it's interesting to see when I'm prompted to write as Gaeilge, and, you know, and it was actually my good friend, Niamh Crahur, who was saying to me when I was asking her if she'd like check me spellings and all when it's finished. And mine wouldn't be that good, you know. So I asked if she would edit and have a look for me. over it. And she said that she would also be very interested to know what naturally comes out, which poems naturally were presented themselves as Gaeilge and which ones were naturally presented themselves in English. And I think that'll be one that'll take a while to get done. And then there's another one again that I have notes for. It's called Point of View, because I do love a good pun.
Yeah.
So it is, point of view, but also point of view, because somebody asked me once, or was having a bit of angst around their legacy and what did it mean and what were they leaving behind. And we had this big long discussion and I made notes and I thought, yes, that might be a short book. But that's been fun to pull together. So I have chapter outlines done for that and it's not written yet. So, that's what I'm hoping to do. And I'm hoping to, I'm intending to get back to Asia then as well, of course, and to continue my work, training and lecturing.
I was actually going to do you head back much, or do you go
Yes.
and do the girls go?
Oh, they do. Go? Yeah, they do. In fact, we're hoping. We're not hoping. We're planning a trip in February because Ishsara was born in the year of the horse, and the year of the horse again in according to the lunar calendar is next year. And I thought we really should go back to Singapore for Chinese New Year because it's such a great festival and I have such wonderful friends there.
Yeah.
That we haven't seen for, because I haven't managed to get back since lockdown because I was very ill, so I wasn't able to travel and all the rest of it. But there's nothing stopping me now. So yeah, we're planning. We've actually just been. I was just talking to friends over the weekend around dates and when we should go back because I think it's a very significant year for Sarah, and I think it would be really good for her to go back.
Excellent.
For the.
And it's lovely. You were saying, look, but you spent a lot of your life there. You spent a lot of your life there, so a lot of friends, and it's always great to visit. We don't do enough of it. We don't do enough of it. I have acquaintances the four corners of the earth. Australia, America, whatever. I have family in America. I have family in Australia, the UK, and even down the country here. And I just never. I come in from work. I come in, and it's the day's gone. The day's gone. But then the other part of it is I get to speak to people like yourself, and I love speaking. Hazel, you made it so easy, and it's been lovely talking to you. I really, really enjoyed it. And what we're going to do is we'll put all the links up.
Thank you.
For your books, for your podcasts, and as Estella said, you have your new podcast up. It's coming out when next week, is it?
Next Monday, yes,
Next Monday.
So we'll have a listen
to that. We'll have a listen to that. So is there anything we've skipped, Hazel? Is there anything we've missed? Well, hopefully, listen, we might do it again.
Don't think so.
Chapter 2, a sequel.
Gosh, the sequel, yes.
We'll get it in, the sequel then. Well, listen, Hazel, it's been an absolute pleasure.
I've enjoyed every second of it.
It's been brilliant. And you never know, we might do a joint cookery book. So I'll have the bacon and cabbage, you can have the Indonesian stuff. Yeah, so Hazel, thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. We'll talk to you again soon.
Cheers. Good night. Bye-bye.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that chat with Hazel. I know I really enjoyed it. If you want to find out any information about Hazel, about her books or podcast, check out the links below and like and subscribe. We'll see you on the other side. Thank you.